Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm going to come over here for a second. What's your name?
I'm Marion.
Marion. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
What's your name?
Lee.
Lee. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Are you not going to ask me how I'm doing?
You're going to be doing terrible because you're standing up in trouble.
I am, but indulge me. Just ask me how I'm doing.
How you doing?
You know, to be honest, I'm really tired. I look like a hot mess because this is my makeup from yesterday. I'm super self-conscious of this scab I have on my lip. And I was up all night because I was stressing over this stupid presentation. I couldn't sleep, and at one point I really just wanted to take too many sleeping pills so that I wouldn't wake up. Wow. So is anyone uncomfortable yet?
I'm there. We're here for you.
Thank you.
Glad you made it, Kelly.
You're way too vulnerable.
Well, that's the point. Well, so was anyone slightly uncomfortable even for a second there when I admitted that? What was going through your head? How were you feeling? Like that tightness in your stomach when you don't know what to say to someone?
I get it.
Yeah. How are you? It's one of the most common phrases we say on a daily basis. It's expected, it's automatic, it's empty, and it's dishonest. Most cases. How often have you said this phrase without really thinking about it, knowing it's not true, but you don't want to get into it because you don't want to stress that person out with your burdens, you know? It might be like inappropriate sometimes, you think, to get into like, actually I'm really depressed today. So you don't mention it, you just keep it to yourself. You don't want to burden others. But we ask this question every day out of habit. And most people don't actually mean it when they say, I'm good. It's just the automatic response. We understand that we're not actually supposed to say how we're doing, because that's not socially acceptable, especially if we're not doing well right now. But I first realized this, it didn't click for me until about 3 years ago, and it's been bothering me ever since. So, this is my brother. We took this picture at his best friend's wedding, and he died 3 years ago. And it still is the hardest thing I've ever gone through. I lost my best friend. I struggled a lot. I'm still struggling. Anyone who's lost someone would understand that. It actually started my faith crisis, wondering if I would ever see him again and how I'm going to cope with that if I don't, because we can't know for sure. And I'm a talker. I need to talk through things in order to fix my problems, to feel like I'm working through it. And so when I was at church, I would tell people, I'm feeling depressed, I'm suicidal, I don't want to live anymore, I'm questioning the church. And after a little bit, like the first 3 months, people were, putting up with it. But after that, 6 months, 8 months, I felt very obviously, even though no one said it directly, that they were like, why haven't you gotten over it yet? Stop talking about it. You're making us uncomfortable. We don't want to deal with it anymore. We don't know what to say, so we don't want you to say it. We don't want you to talk about it. And that makes all of us close up, because being a burden on others is worse than the pain we're going through. That's what it seems like to me, at least. That it's bad enough I'm going through it, I don't want to put it on anyone else. But then we just keep it inside, and everyone's doing that, because we're not talking. People would say things to help me feel better, thinking it was what I needed to say. Oh, it gets better with time. Time heals wounds, it'll hurt less. And it wasn't true, it doesn't get better. And at one point, a girl in my hometown, I never met her, but I heard that her brother passed away. And so I reached out to her, and she asked me for advice. She's like, does it ever get better? And I told her the truth. I told her it doesn't. But here's been my experience, here's what I've learned. And she just started bawling, and she was like, you're the only person who's been honest with me, and that's the only thing that's helped me since he's passed. No one else has been able to understand. We all have these moments in our life where we're going through something. Depression is normal. Everyone experiences it to a certain degree. But as someone with mental health, I want people to stop looking at me like I'm crazy and being visibly uncomfortable whenever I'm too honest or too real for them to handle. I want to be able to talk about my life openly, just like any mentally stable person has the social luxury to do. We can make this possible by talking about our experiences in safe and respectful environments, and allow others to do the same by being vulnerable ourselves. In Utah, lovely state, we're 5th in the nation for suicide. We're 1st for prescription drug abuse, especially among women. And the leading cause of death for young adults is suicide. People struggle in silence, and they put up this facade, especially younger people. I mean, who hated high school? God damn it.
I still hate it.
I know, poor thing. It sucks, right? You put up this front because that's what you have to do to fit into a clique, to have your little friend circle. There's always the groups that make fun of the others, because they think it's cool. That's what you have to do to hide your own pain, is like make fun of other people or brush off their pain. And this makes it hard to open up and be honest when it feels like people would rather hear the lie. They don't want you to be truthful and open. When you wish you could share how you feel, no matter if it's good or bad. Like, when I'm having a great day, I want to tell people, I'm awesome. I look hot today, and I just feel really good. And I also want to talk about when I woke up and I'm feeling depressed and I'm having a lot of anxiety and I'm not sure why. But especially with younger kids, they've never been given the words to say how they're feeling. I never took a communication class in high school, that's for damn sure. No one taught me it was okay to talk about my emotions, even as a woman. And I know for men growing up, it's even harder, that they feel like they can't talk about it. And they don't even know how if they wanted to. We never learn the ways to share our pain if life and society only seems to value us when we're at our best. But, there's that famous quote, if you don't love me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. And I feel like that's pretty true, but we can't know that about someone unless we open up and they see our worst part and they value us more because of that with time. So, I said I was mentally ill. I have a lot of issues, I'm crazy. I have OCD, and about 2 months ago, I finally decided to start therapy for it. So I actually quit school for the time being, I quit my jobs, and I've been doing full-time OCD therapy in Bountiful, and I live in Sandy, so I'm all over the place. But it's every day from 12 to 3, and then there's homework on top of that. So it's been like one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it's also been one of the most valuable, because I've learned so much about myself, and I've met other people that are similar to me. Everyone in my group has OCD and anxiety, and it was the first time in my life that I was in a room with other people that were open and talking about it. It was so cool, because I realized, oh, that's OCD, and I didn't know for 22 years of my life. I'm 23 now, but being able to talk about that and be in a group setting where it's okay to admit that, like, Sometimes we're suicidal, multiple people in the group are. Made it easier to open up and say like, yeah, I've had that too. It's good to know I'm not alone. You're not alone. So being in OCD therapy made me start thinking about health in general. So you can Google anything online and find a diagnosis for, like, there's 100 different diagnoses just because you have a headache. And so it made me start thinking, there are about 24,000 genes in the human body. So the chances of just one being mutated or abnormal is actually really high. Most of us do. Red hair is a genetic anomaly. There's nothing wrong with that. OCD is a genetic anomaly. Being in a wheelchair can sometimes be because of an anomaly. And I think the problem is that society thought that there is a normal and built itself around that idea, when abnormal is normal. We all have something that's unique, and we all have something in common. Someone is going through the same struggles you are, just maybe in a slightly different way. And that's okay. We need to, by talking about it, though, we can create a better society that's more understanding and accepting and doesn't pigeonhole us into one way of thinking, one way of living, 9-to-5 job, college degree at a normal, like, traditional university, all this shit that we think we have to do in order to succeed. So these are some tools that they've taught us in therapy to help with our pain. And the thing that really struck me is them teaching us to recognize what is common about humanity. We all suffer, all of us. And that's almost liberating, actually. You realize that that gives you something in common with everyone sitting next to you. We're all human. We're all just trying to live life, and it's hard. And it's always going to be hard. But we can also learn self-kindness, understanding our pain, and that comes through admitting it and finding likeness, other people talking about it together so that we can understand and grow, accept it. It's okay, you don't have to push it away. I have OCD, I'm bisexual, you know, I'm agnostic. Those are just facts, and it's okay to accept it. Pushing it away is what's causing more pain. And then we can learn how to be patient with ourselves and others. We can be mindful by being present with our feelings, by observing them internally, and then describing and participating in them with others. And that's how we work through it and learn how to understand the skills to heal. This also includes with yourself. And I feel people forget this, that communication's not just with others. You gotta communicate with little Kelly in here. It's okay to not be okay. People try too hard, too often to hide their struggles, which causes other people to feel the need to do the same thing, rather than seeking help and getting better. It doesn't make you weak to have struggles. Common humanity, everyone suffers. And there is understanding and love in that fact. I've noticed through learning more about communication, and this is becoming a big passion of mine, that one of the main issues is homogeny, which by definition is sameness. Seeking out people that are only like you and no one else. And this can create more pain and lack of kindness. This is what causes the fear of unknown in all of our societal divisions: race, class, nationality, religion, gender, sexuality, neurodiversity. If we don't understand something, then we are scared of it. And often we don't want to talk about it because it's easier to stick with what we know than learn and understand something we don't have experience with. But I like applying the idea of consequentialism, which is the idea that morality comes from consequences, not from intentions. What this means is that in order to effectively communicate, we have to be respectful and understanding, and when someone hurts us, we need to forgive. And in exchange, if we hurt someone, we need to be humble and make up for it. And it's natural, it's normal. All of us are gonna hurt someone, and we're gonna be hurt by others. And it's important to be respectful rather than being right. Honestly and patiently expressing when you've been hurt and admitting to your wrongdoings and apologizing if you hurt someone, even if it was unintentionally. So how do we foster open dialogue? Remembering that people are more important than beliefs. This is one of our main values in our community, but it applies to us as well, not just religion. We often apply it to this idea that many of us are secular, and we're tired of beliefs being more important in traditional churches than people. But that means us too. We all have our opinions, we all have a political party, and it's okay to have your opinions, but not if that comes above someone's well-being and safety. We need to value relationships over being right, and use our pain to share our unique view of the world. We have so much to offer, but we have to speak and be open, even when it's hard, to foster change. Oops. I don't know what just happened. Many people who value open dialogue are often swayed into agreeing to disagree, or pushing really awful dogma and being unwilling to engage beyond just pushing your own opinion. But vulnerability in communication doesn't mean compromising your values. It just means being open to listening, to hearing, to being taught, and at least exploring new ideas. We can learn how to communicate and respect other people's opinions without compromising our own values. And we can learn to create a balance and speak on other people's terms rather than our own. That's what love and respect means. And this can be a bridge, and we can become peacemakers rather than allowing contempt to control how we view others that we don't agree with. We can, by doing this, I honestly believe that we can solve all the world's problems through effective communication and more education. That's, I don't know, 99% of the problems can be solved. Through this presentation, and I'm hoping to continue to talk about this in other communities, my intention is to create real, vulnerable, and authentic dialogue about our doubts, our beliefs, our pains, and our joys. I want a day where understanding is more common than animosity. I want people to be open-minded and not be afraid to greet the unknown willingly, which is really hard, but we'll just be much more happier for it if we understand that life is uncertain. That's really hard with OCD, by the way, because we want everything to be certain. But embracing that willingly rather than willfully can make a lot of difference in how we love ourselves and we see others. If more people were consciously trying to see others' points of view and understand where they're coming from, there would be so much more love and understanding and empathy in the world. But this won't happen if we're too stubborn to let go of our pride and our need to be right. People are more important than beliefs. We need to work to understand, and it is work, it takes effort at first. We need to show love and acceptance, and we need to listen, really listen, not just wait to speak. How are you? I'm good, how are you? And then it's just an excuse to speak about yourself. This needs to change. And I think by talking more and telling people what you're going through, even when it's hard, it's going to be hard at first. People are going to treat you weird at first as well, but you might touch someone, and that'll make all the difference to them. Q&A, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly.
Time for some questions.
That was great.
Thank you.
Appreciate your openness, and you raise some tremendous points there. My background's biochemistry, so your discussion of genetics, it's right on point. I mean, we're all on a spectrum. I mean, genetics is a spectrum, whether it's your cholesterol level, whether it's your sexuality, your skin color, hair color, whatever. Genetics doesn't, it's not selective and exclusive and says, okay, well, we're not going to tamper with genes involved in human sexuality, so because God has said those are sacred, and so homosexuality is immoral. Genetics doesn't work that way, and we see that in other animal species too. So we're not somehow above that genetically.
I appreciate that you think I did well. I'm running on just Adderall right now. So.
I had a quick question, and maybe I missed the corner. You were making a comment about to agree to disagree. Were you saying that sometimes people get pressured into saying to agree to disagree, or that agree to disagree is a contributing factor to coming to an interchange?
Yeah, that was where I was losing my train of thought because Adderall and no sleep. Yeah, what I meant was, in my opinion, I see it more as a cop-out often. It's typically when two people are disagreeing and one of them just doesn't want to deal with the conflict anymore, and so they just say agree to disagree rather than listening. It's an excuse to shut down, to put up your wall, because you're basically saying like, well, I have my opinion and we're just going to disagree, so let's stop talking. And that just gets in the way, because it's not fun to talk to someone who legitimately thinks that there's something wrong with me because I'm bisexual. But I'm not going to make his life better, their life better, or mine by walking away and not doing anything. And I'm also not going to make it better by getting angry just because someone doesn't understand. I think people deserve the benefit of a doubt, that if they have an opinion that's hurtful, maybe they just haven't met the right person. Maybe they haven't had an opportunity to learn because of the way they were raised, because of their socioeconomic status. There's plenty of reasons. Unless someone has repeated a mistake or done you wrong multiple times in a row, I feel like a big issue with society is our automatic response to anyone who disagrees with us is to be tense and on the offense rather than just listen and recognize that maybe there's still commonality here somewhere. We can find it. We can talk long enough to find something that we're similar on. Does that make sense?
Well, I just appreciate that you highlighted it. It's about the intent, how it's stated. Because I've also been in scenarios where people are legitimately saying, well, on this point, we can agree to disagree. But what I'm hearing you say is that then you can bridge into other areas of potential interchange.
Yeah. I think that you can still effectively communicate the spirit behind the idea of agree to disagree, the good part of it, by explaining it better though, by saying, I respect you as a person, and I think you're great. We don't happen to agree right now on this topic, but I still respect you and I still want to keep talking. but it's okay if this isn't a safe topic for you anymore.
Oh,
That's taking ownership more, and it's also not pushing the blame on someone else. It's not always intentional, but when someone says agree to disagree, it feels attacking, like they're saying the issue is with you. So if we're going to learn how to effectively communicate, like I'm really liberal, it's not gonna help to continually say you're a bad person because you're racist. They're not gonna change because of that. Instead, I need to be humble and say, you know, I'm sorry if like I'm not understanding you right now. Maybe we can come back to this later, or something to that effect.
thank you.
So what do you do if someone like you try to bring up a conversation, like a topic in a safe way, but immediately they get defensive? So is that sort of, like how would you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. I think that's like where you, if you have the skills, if you've like understood this idea of open dialogue and that person is more important than their beliefs, then you can take control of the situation and say, hey, I'm sorry, let's back up a minute. I'm not attacking you. It's okay if if you have a really strong opinion on this topic, but I don't want to like hurt your feelings. I don't want to start an argument. So where can I back up and help you not feel like I'm attacking you? So again, you're taking it on yourself and expressing the situation in a way that's not pushing off the issue on the other person so that they don't continue to feel attacked. You take ownership for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think finding that common thread happens, like it helps a lot. Like I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into really bad Facebook debates. And funny, true story, the other day I got into a really bad argument with this guy I didn't know, and I basically called him a dick. And then I found out he was vegan. And I was like, oh, I like it now. And so I even private messaged him and I was like, hey, we disagree on this one thing, but we agree on this other thing, and I want to apologize because I think you're cool, and blah, blah, blah. Now we're Facebook friends. So, he's laughing at me. But sometimes, you have to dig to find it. It could be that you both played soccer in high school, but finding it honestly makes a huge difference, like right away, if people know that they have something in common with you.
Well, it's challenging too in communication. You gotta both be willing to communicate. Sometimes interchanges go on and one or more of the people involved aren't even aware that they're offending someone else or hurting someone else. So that's a big awareness quotient to bring up the scale.
For sure. That was something I didn't get into as much, but like that's where I apply the idea of consequentialism. Plenty of people have hurt me and offended me, and you don't choose to be offended. It's a normal emotion. You do control how you react, though. I do personally take issue with, on both party lines, on both sides of any spectrum, people tend to as soon as they get offended or someone says something hurtful, they go on they attack back and say you're hateful, you're a bigot, you hate religion, blah,
It
blah,
goes
blah.
beyond the discussion into
Right.
personal attack.
Yes.
Hearing these things.
Yes, and as a person that learns these skills, what we can do instead is if someone says something to me, I don't think women are as equal as men, kind of, I don't know. Instead of saying, well, you're sexist, and I hate you, and you're a terrible person, I can be like, hey, your comment kind of hurt me, and here's why. And I just wanted to tell you in a respectful way because maybe you didn't mean to, but can we talk about it? And that's also how you can tell if someone's at this time ready for this type of dialogue, because if they don't respond well, then just let it go and don't put yourself in more suffering when it's unnecessary. You can always choose to back out if your safety is compromised.
Last question.
Just a comment. You seem like a very sensitive person to me, and I'm curious. I'm now 77 years of age, and I wouldn't be one who would say that I've been hurt a lot by people and what they say to me. And I'm curious about why that's my experience, and your experience at age 23. It sounds like you're having all this conflict that maybe it's over my head or something, but in 77 years, I can only think of maybe 4 or 5 people who really offended me in something that's been said. Maybe it's a lack of sensitivity on my part, or maybe there's too much sensitivity on your part, and maybe you're being offended too easily or something. I'm just trying to figure out why the gap in terms of our own personal interaction with people, and why you're offended so much, and it has happened very rarely in my case.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I do think, by the way, that sensitive is a good thing. I'm just going to say, like, I take that as a compliment.
It's good to have diversity. You've got to have every part of the spectrum, or you're going to be lopsided in the world.
Like 2 or 3 things popped into my head. One of them, I would say, is our differences in identity. I am a woman, and I'm a queer woman. And you appear to be a white man. I don't want to assume your identity, but, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I want to point that out. As a feminist, I love men. I have nothing against men. But there are certain social opportunities that you were given that I wasn't as an automatic. I was raised differently than my own brother in this era, and you're from a different era, so it was even more different. My grandma is 81, and so this was the second thing I was thinking of. I think it's also just a cultural difference, and a lack of social dialogue. I mean, I wasn't alive in the 50s, or 60s or whatever, but I imagine from what my grandmother has told me that these topics like LGBTQ rights, fourth wave feminism and stuff wasn't really a topic back then. You just didn't talk about it. You went to your job, you provided for your family, and went home to your kids. And so I think that's a big difference. And, we actually in OCD therapy at one point talked about the difference in generations and how to bridge that gap. Because, like, I told my grandma about my OCD therapy, and her automatic response was, "Oh, I had that too." And you know, it kind of.
She had the therapy or the OCD?
OCD.
Oh,
she was saying, "Oh yeah, I have that. Like, I like to be organized," which isn't what OCD is. And like, you know, my gut reaction was like, that hurt me a little bit. I didn't choose to feel hurt or offended by what she said, but I didn't overreact. I just said, I'm sure you've gone through similar things, Grandma. My OCD is just a lot more crippling. You know, it's made it so that I can't finish school, so I'm taking a break so I can go back to school. And my aunt even told me afterwards, she's like, I know your grandma probably hurt your feelings. And I was like, yeah, but she just is from a different time and doesn't quite understand that can be like hurtful to like assume that you've been through the exact same thing as someone else. And again, that's like, I think the burden honestly falls on me as the younger generation. And I do see this as an issue with like a lot of people are really mean to the baby boomers and the older generation simply because it was kind of normal to be racist in the 50s, you know, and that's not your fault. But we can talk about it and still be respectful and teach each other like how we can be better. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, but I'm still puzzled by the whole concept because, you know, I guess my attitude about people that have a different perspective, particularly if I feel like that it's ignorance on their part, I tend to have this attitude that with time you'll understand, you'll get it, and I don't let it bother me or worry me or offend me. because I think it's just a matter of information. And I can accept that and not be offended by somebody that sees the world a little differently. They can have an experience what I've experienced, and so they're not where I am. It's kind of like a stages in Nirvana or whatever, where you kind of, and if you're kind of confident that you're okay, then maybe people won't offend you so much as if you're insecure or something. I don't know.
But, yeah, no, I agree with you both. It's confidence in your own opinion and position, but like you say, that comes a lot from your life experience. I mean, I'm a white male too, and I'm like Gary. I don't get offended, but that's because, you know, I've been privileged. You know, I'm not a woman and been told somehow I'm lesser or something. So I have more confidence to say, hey, you know, what an idiot, you know, rather than be offended. Exactly.
Well, and it begs the question too, Kelly, did you find yourself finding ways to help your grandmother understand your experience of OCD? Because she, in her frame of reference, may think she understands that, you know, it gets bantered around a lot, OCD, but she won't know your pathway until you find the way to help her understand. And then the conversation elevates some, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do when I feel she's like open to listening. But actually, what was your name, Gary?
Gary.
What's my uncle's name? He just had another name. I actually like what you said though, because that's kind of my point, is that the feeling of being hurt is totally natural, and the problem I think is when people attach that to the person that feeling came from, rather than digging before responding and being like, okay, where did this come from though? Because the issue isn't the individuals, like you said. Sometimes they just don't know. So I guess what I'm offended at is lack of education. And that's like not one person's issue, that's a societal issue, which is why I said in my presentation, I'm really passionate about education and effective communication, because I think those are the issues, not individuals, unless you're like absolutely going out of your way to hurt people. But,
it's so interesting, it's societal or cultural on scope, yet the practical application is truly individual.
yeah.
Well, I was thinking about your first example about how are you? There is no one here who has not said that, and as maybe a greeting or something, as a casual thing. But there are also, everyone here has probably had the experience where they know somebody's having a problem, and instead of saying, how are you, you say, how are you? Where you're really showing an interest in trying to figure out what it is. So that superficial kind of, I mean, do we just say good morning? I'm not saying good morning, how are you? Because we don't mean it's how are you. It's kind of is almost a standard greeting, but there's a level of interaction that stepwise where you really feel a need to interact with somebody and really ask sincerely, how are you? When you're just sometimes just passing, you know, just giving a reference for a good morning or how are you kind of thing, you know, not meaning to really interact.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to interact and other times you don't. So I guess I don't feel uncomfortable about saying to somebody, how are you, you know.
No, you don't, I wasn't like saying you have to change that. And I think most of us can tell the difference.
Yeah.
Like when a good friend of mine stops in the hall and says, Kelly, I haven't seen you in a while, how are you?
And they're serious.
They're asking me, but my point was, even when they are, like even a good friend asking me that, they're not expecting to hear me say, you know, and it's not their fault, like they weren't expecting that, but if they're sincerely asking, then they need to like, we all need to be like, okay, they're being open with me right now, and that must be really hard, so let me respond adequately. And even if you don't know what to say, like my example with my brother, people don't know what to say to me, it's okay to just say that. Kelly, it sounds like you're struggling, and I wish I knew the right thing to say, and I don't. but I'm here.
Because until we're open on every aspect of the conversation of the interchange, when will it change? When will it be any different? You know, unless we add the additional, you know, you can tell your friend is really asking, and maybe they learn to say, I mean, really, where have you been? I haven't seen you. Are you doing okay? That starts to shift the entire dialogue.
It involves a certain amount of intimacy prior.
Right.
And it's not there, and you just see people casually, you know, once a week or even once a month, you kind of don't anticipate a big change. But the people you're more intimate with, then suddenly your interest is. And it turns out for me, it's primarily family members that I'm curious and want to know more about, because I feel some interest and responsibility more so for them than I do non-family members.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between like having boundaries. All of us have different boundaries. Some of us are more extroverted than others. If your personal boundary is like you don't want to divulge personal information, that's completely okay. All I'm talking about in this is like stifling because you feel like you shouldn't, which is completely different. So if your close circle is only your family, that's totally fine. Be open with them. But if like someone like me, I like talking to anyone, and I used to just not say how I was actually feeling because I knew that they were going to respond like uncomfortably, and I think that's a core reason to not be vulnerable and honest. And you'd be surprised how much it can positively affect someone. Like I said, I've reached out to strangers, and they've told me that I made a big difference in their life, and that feels really good, which is a little selfish of me, but I'm admitting to it. So, anyway, yeah. Okay, thank you guys.
I'm so glad that Kelly was able to come and speak to us on this. This is something that I'm also passionate about. I think it's just something that we all need to practice more. I recently went to a marriage therapy. It was actually a mixed faith marriage retreat, and it was amazing. But you know, the number one thing that he talked about was you don't have a religion problem, you have an intimacy problem. And then he spent 3 days talking to us on vulnerability and communication. That is what the whole thing was about. And it was touching to me that I think exactly as Kelly was saying, that when we can be vulnerable, when we can be open and honest, but like you're saying, there has to be this safety. You have to feel safe. Well, maybe not necessarily. If you feel safe because you don't really care if you say anything, right? You know what I mean? Like you're doing that. But if you don't feel safe and that it's going to harm you more than it's going to help you, then it's not the appropriate time to be vulnerable. But if we feel that way, we should be vulnerable, because we're going to teach other people how to react, and that it's okay for them to be vulnerable, and it's okay to have communication, because we all have more in common than not. So anyway, that was just my little wrap up, because I think this is amazing.